we will have Jill Stein, who was the Green Party candidate, presidential candidate, is a Harvard-educated doctor, a pioneer in the environmental health advocacy domain, and has been organizing for the people, planet, and peace. She's seen also many victories in campaigns around finance reform, racial injustice, in terms of cleaning up of incinerators and the coal on the planet. And she was a principal organizer for the global climate convergence for people, planet, and peace over profit. So I know in your busy schedule, Jill, who just came out of the campaign, we are super appreciative to have you here. So over to you. Oh, you're muted.
Got it. Thank you so much, Mikaela. And thank you especially to Walden Bello for those very thoughtful and compelling remarks. And thank you to all the speakers and everyone who's here. And just, coming off of a U.S. Presidential campaign, I'm mainly focused on the issues that were kind of front and center in the campaign that pertain more to trends in this country, which, for better and for worse, will have enormous impacts all over the world. And, I'm very interested to hear perspectives from outside of this country in this conversation, and really appreciate how critically important this dialogue is going forward. And, it feels very much like this is just a beginning, and it's a really critical beginning. And to frame sort of things from the biggest picture at this point, we are at a moment where the U.S. Continues to consider itself the monopolar power in the world, even while it is no longer in that position. So we do appear very much to be on a collision course between U.S. foreign policy, which is still one of so-called full spectrum dominance, that the U.S. will be the dominant player really across the world, and will not allow other regional powers even to rise to regional prominence. This is the foreign policy articulated with the fall of the Soviet Union around 1990, and it still continues to be the thinking of not only the presidential contenders, but also very much Congress. So we still have that to deal with. The U.S. is no longer the dominant power, but thinks that it is, and it's so critical that we stand up and force the hand of the U.S. To comply not only with reality, with shared power, with a multipolar world, but also to try to impress this upon Congress, that we see very much going along in all of these spheres of conflict right now. So that's just to kind of frame the larger dynamic here, which is that of an empire which is unraveling quickly and refuses to acknowledge that. I also want to acknowledge how much Trump is an unknown quantity, as Walden Bello pointed out. It's very unclear what direction he's going, and his appointments, in fact, the people who are now nominated to his cabinet are so not only that they represent some diversity, they are it's largely a cabinet of, by, and for the billionaires. There are at least 5 billionaires in extreme positions of power, including, for example, Elon Musk, who famously said in 2020, I believe it was 2022, may have been before that, who famously said that we will coup wherever we want to. This was in response to him being challenged for influencing U.S. policy to overthrow the government of Bolivia in order to improve his access to lithium and other rare metals. His response was, well, we will coup, wherever we want, get used to it. This is kind of the mindset of some of the players coming in into his cabinet, and his cabinet appointees are especially unqualified for their positions. Their main qualification seems to be opposing the the function of the cabinet that they are joining. So it's very hard to say at this point how it's going to play out, and in fact, whether all of them will, in fact, pass muster. It is a slightly encouraging sign that the Senate refused to simply rubber stamp with so-called recess appointments, which would have put these various players into power for 2 years without any scrutiny at all. And some of them, some of the more aggressive and bellicose among them may not pass scrutiny. And we already saw, for better or for worse, his nominee for Attorney General go down in flames. So I wouldn't rule out that will happen to others. So, I think what's very difficult to deal with right now in this transition is that we don't know what we're getting. And we don't know who will be whispering into Trump's ear. And because he does not have a fundamental, a political ideology himself, he seems to be quite vulnerable to who's whispering to him. And let's see, just want to keep an eye on the time here. So let me just try to make a couple points. And please remind me, Mikaela, when we're getting close, when we're within a minute or so of concluding.
3 minutes still. 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Okay, thank you. So just, reminding people the events of this last week really are of great concern, where Biden gave the thumbs up for using long-range U.S. missiles to attack Russia. And we saw Russia basically, respond by lowering their threshold for using nuclear missiles and threatening to use them. And they responded to the U.S. And U.K. Use of long-range missiles by using a hypersonic long-range missile of its own. And what's terrifying to hear now is that the U.S. is also apparently has talked with Ukraine about arming Ukraine with nuclear weapons as well. And some of us, I think, are very riveted on this incredible crisis that we are in at this very moment. This crisis of potential nuclear escalation. And by the U.S. Allowing Ukraine to use these weapons, which means that there's direct involvement as well in the U.S. It's basically made the U.S. and NATO potential targets here as well. So this is extremely alarming. Also, the U.S. casting its fourth veto on a ceasefire resolution for Gaza makes clear that, again, well, this is still Biden, but Trump has given no indications that he will do otherwise. His offer of a ceasefire treaty with Lebanon and Hezbollah is, well, shall we say, it is not. It's not what it appears to be, and it's an extremely disabling arrangement that would basically be a surrender for Hezbollah. It's very unlikely to move forward, and it's really just the pretense of a resolution, which again, I think underscores that we have a very serious problem, which is not going away under Trump as we move into the new regime here. And just quickly, a couple things on a positive note, and that is that international solidarity, I think, has been critical in attempting to contain the U.S. and its genocidal war on Gaza. International solidarity has been very critical in supporting the decision of the ICJ, and also there are many countries now that have indicated they are going to comply with the International Criminal Court ruling, including the head of foreign policy for the EU, as well as Canada, Spain, Italy, several other countries as well. So we do see the international community lending support. Clearly, what we need on that front is an economic boycott, and over 52 countries have expressed solidarity in calling for, I should say, a military boycott. There probably ought to be an economic boycott as well, but at least the call is now out there for the military boycott, and I think it's just a hint of what we could potentially do in solidarity to ramp up the pressure, both to contain this the potential for nuclear war, which is very real right now, as well as to push back. The good news is that Israel cannot continue to. Well, this is mixed news. Israel cannot continue this war by itself. It is desperate for boots on the ground right now, unable to conscript them from their own people. Biden has promised boots on the ground. The U.S. has already provided some, and the draft has been reestablished here, the military draft. So there is definitely the potential for a lot of pushback here from the U.S. As the open-ended commitment to this genocidal war continues to come home. There's a lot more to be said, but I will yield, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I look forward to hearing what all the other discussants have to say. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you so much, Jill. Highly appreciated, and in particular because, as you mentioned, there's several talking points that I'm having sparks in my brain right now. One of them is that we just released a briefing with Tricontinental called "Trump's Victory is a Moribund Symptom of US Imperial Decline." And I think that this is particularly a point that we're trying to share from Tricontinental, from No Cold War, that these reactions are based on the fact that the US is in decline and is acting as a wounded animal would do, which is viciously. But the question of how the international community responds to this and how we put pressure is, I think, an important source of discussion and point of reflection. But I will say, I was just in Niger where we had a international gathering of people in solidarity and organizations in solidarity with the people of the Sahel. And one of the encouraging things was that earlier this year, they broke their agreement with the US military, which Niger had the largest foreign US military base, a big drone base that was overseeing basically the entire Sahel. And they broke their relation or the 10-year agreement earlier this year. And we still need to kick out the diplomatic forces, but the US drone base is no longer in use. So there are steps being made across the world that I think are optimistic.